Okay, welcome back. In this segment, we're going to introduce the software itself that you'll be using. This is the Biopac software that you'll be downloading. So the software receives the signal from the lab kit that you'll have, and then it plots it as a waveform. So we have our waveforms here. They will look very different depending on what they're measuring. So this is part of this class, is you'll get a sense of looking at a particular shape and even having a sense just from looking at the shape of the waveform and the pattern that it's showing you what it might be measuring, whether it's heart or brain, etc. All of this happens at a certain sampling rate. So this is not an analog signal where it's completely continuous and smooth. It is a digital signal. So while it will look almost completely smooth, it is actually plotting individual data points that it samples along the way. And then it's important to know that within the software, multiple waveforms can be plotted at a given time. So that's very helpful, because sometimes you're trying to, when you're getting into the actual research part of it, you're going to want to see the different waveforms at the same time and see what's happening for that person. How is their brain responding? How is their heart responding? Sometimes a lot of research is looking at how all the different parts are happening at the same time. So just kind of to take a very simplistic setup of the interface, the x-axis is always going to be time. And you'll see this as you're recording your own signal. You'll see things moving over time. The signal will actually be plotting itself in real time. And then that y-axis kind of just generically is the amplitude of the signal. So amplitude is a fancy word for the y-axis, how high it goes. And that'll be measured in a variety of different units depending on what we're measuring in the body. And that'll be an important piece. We'll talk more about units in later sessions. So I wanted to give you some vocabulary, because a lot of the lab manual, the segments that I've extracted for you, use a lot of terminology. And if you haven't kind of been oriented to what that looks like when you hear about the data window, it's going to be harder for you to read the instructions and know what they're telling you to do. So this is the main data window. This is where your live physiological data will be coming in real time. Now below that is what's called the journal. And this is a place where data can be extracted from the signal. After you've gathered your signal, you can highlight a certain part of your data, and that's what the lab reports are going to ask you to do. And then they're going to say, well, what was such and such number here? You can find it up here and extract it down here and keep a record of it down in the journal. So there's a lot of things you can do placing things in the journal. This fell off the page a little bit, but each one of these rows that is color-coded with different color-coded signal coming in is a channel. So in this example with these three different color-coded signals, we have three different channels. So, and the name of the channel is identified way over here on the side. This is the force, this is a raw EMG channel, and then this is an integrated EMG. And this is a good illustration because your first actual lab is going to be EMG lab. So different aspects of the signal can be extracted out here and placed in different channels. Up above, this is super important, these are your channel controls. So if you hold your Alt key down and you click with your mouse on one of these, it toggles between hide and show. So you can hide a channel for a while if it's in your way and it's not part of a piece that you're trying to calculate for your lab report, and then you can Alt click it again to have it show once more. So that's a really important feature. Up above that, these are the channel values in the calculations. These are going to be essential because the lab report is going to ask you for values of this and that. So the way this works is, you might be able to guess, this color coding is super helpful. This is highlighted with a green and it says 40. And so these three channels here are channel 1, channel 3, and channel 40. So your channel 40 is down here. And what it's doing here is this particular one right now is calculating the mean. So probably in your lab report, you're going to have to give the mean value at some stage of this channel down here. So these are really important. Every semester I have students saying, I don't know what I'm calculating, I don't know what this number is. These right up here are where your channel calculations go. Another important one that you need to know is P to P. That stands for peak to peak. So a lot of things we'll be doing is cyclical rhythmic things such as a heart rate. And in order to get a heart rate, or in order to understand the amount of time that took place between heartbeats, you're going to be highlighting with your cursor between one beat to the next. And usually the easiest way to do that is to find the peak of the signal rather than just some middle point and you're not sure what's going on. The peaks are very easy to find. So P to P is peak to peak. Another important thing to recognize here, this little tiny diamond that's going to show up. There's here and here's a little tiny diamond. It's almost impossible to see. These mark the start of a new epoch. So an epoch is just a batch of data that you're going to be collecting. And in each of the labs you'll be running, there are usually more than one epoch. So you'll hit the start button, you'll gather some data, then you'll hit the stop button and finish gathering a piece of your physiological data. Then you'll do some change to your body or some change to conditions, and then you'll hit the start button again. And this automatically puts a little diamond there to let you know you stopped measuring here and you started measuring again over here. So that's what the epochs are. Way down in the bottom of this example is the display tools. These are super important, and depending on how your layout is, these tools may be over on a corner up here, they may be up top over here, maybe down here. Biopac likes to move them around and keep you on your toes. So don't give up finding it. It's going to be somewhere. And if you can't find it, you can always ask me in our synchronous sort of lab sessions. And I'm going to go through each of these. These are the controls that allow you to do different things to the data. Okay, the first one is the selection tool. This is just your classic ability to click in different places and select things and do things. So most people are familiar with that. The I-beam tool, a lot of people are not familiar with. It's not in other types of software typically. So this is the I-beam tool. It looks just like an eye. And when you click it, your mouse, your cursor becomes an I-beam shape. And what you're going to do is that allows you to highlight a segment of data. So you would click and hold your mouse down and then drag across a certain segment of data that you need to measure, and then release. And what that'll do is it'll highlight that swatch of data, and then you'll have that accessible to measure the mean from, measure the peak to peak from, whatever needs to be done in the given lab report. And then the last tool is the zoom tool. We're familiar with the idea of zoom tool from other software, but this works a little bit differently. You're going to click on a piece of data you want to zoom into, and literally you're going to draw a rectangle around where you want to zoom with the zoom tool engaged. So you don't just, you can single click on it and it'll zoom in on a random piece of data and you'll never know where you were or where you went, and it's very hard to get out of it. So it's important to use that zoom tool by drawing a rectangle around this piece of data you want to zoom into. One thing to note that's counterintuitive is if I drew my little rectangle right around this piece, it would actually zoom in on that time period for all three channels. So it doesn't eliminate the other channels, it just zooms in on the period of time you selected. And that's it for the introduction to the software.